Victoria Ashford's hand trembled as she held out the black platinum card toward the homeless man sitting under the Kennedy Expressway overpass. This was insane. Completely insane. But she'd already made up her mind. "Take it," she said, her voice barely audible over the traffic roaring above them. "For 24 hours. Buy whatever you want." The man stared at her like she'd just offered him a live grenade. His son, maybe 6 years old, coughed into a threadbare blanket, the sound rattling deep in his small chest. The father's arm tightened protectively around the boy. "Lady, I don't know what kind of game this is, but we don't want trouble," he said, his voice rough from cold and exhaustion. Victoria had woken up that morning in her penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, surrounded by everything money could buy, and felt absolutely nothing. 31 years old. $4.3 billion in assets. And she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt genuinely happy. Her driver had taken the usual route through the West Loop, and she'd glanced out the window exactly the wrong moment. Or maybe the right one. She'd seen them, father and son, huddled together, the little boy's face pressed against his father's chest as he coughed immensely and repeatedly. Something inside her cracked. Now here she was, 3 hours later, standing in front of them with her American Express Centurion card extended like a peace offering. "It's not a game," Victoria insisted. "I just need to know something. My father always said people waste what they're given. That if you hand someone cash, they'll throw it away on drugs or alcohol or lottery tickets. I want to prove him wrong. Or right. I don't know anymore." The man's eyes narrowed. "So we're your little experiment?" "Yes," Victoria said bluntly, because lying seemed pointless now. "I'll be back tomorrow morning, same time. The card is unlimited. No PIN required. Buy whatever you want, and I'll see what you chose. That's all." She pulled out a business card with her personal number scrawled on the back. "If there's any trouble, call me. Otherwise, I'll see you at sunrise." Before he could respond, Victoria turned and walked back to where her driver waited, her heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't look back. She couldn't. If she did, she might lose her nerve and take the card back, and then she'd never know if her father had been right about people, about poverty, about everything he'd taught her since she was old enough to understand what their last name meant in Chicago. That night, Victoria stood in the marble bathroom of her penthouse and stared at her reflection. She'd grown up in rooms like this. Rooms where the fixtures cost more than most people's cars. Her father, Richard Ashford, had built his empire on real estate development, and he'd raised her with one unshakable principle: never give people direct help. They'll only disappoint you. She remembered being 12 years old, asking him why they didn't just give money to homeless people instead of routing everything through foundations and nonprofits. "Because they'll waste it, sweetheart," he said, not unkindly. "Drugs, alcohol, bad decisions. We give to institutions because institutions have oversight. People need to be managed, Victoria. Especially people who've already proven they can't manage themselves." She believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was her father, and he was brilliant, and he'd turned a small construction company into a multi-billion-dollar empire. If Richard Ashford said poor people couldn't be trusted with money, then it must be true. But lately, something had been eating at her. A restlessness. A sense that all her wealth, all her power, all her privilege meant absolutely nothing. She threw charity galas that raised millions. She sat on board. She wrote checks. And none of it felt real. None of it touched the actual problem, which was that people were sleeping under highway overpasses while she lived in the sky. Her phone sat on the bathroom counter, silent. No alerts. No charges. It was nearly midnight, and the homeless man hadn't used her card even once. Victoria picked up the phone and checked again. Nothing. What was he waiting for? Was he afraid it was a trap? Was he debating whether to max it out before she could cancel it? Or was he simply too exhausted, too focused on keeping his son warm, to even think about spending money? She couldn't sleep. She lay in her king-sized bed with her phone on the pillow beside her, checking it every few minutes. At 2 a.m, she gave up and moved to the living room, staring out at the city lights reflected on the lake. Somewhere out there, under that overpass, a father and son were trying to survive the November cold. And she just handed them the keys to unlimited wealth for a single day. What had she been thinking? By dawn, Victoria was already dressed and pacing by the door. Her driver looked surprised when she told him they were leaving early, but he didn't question it. They never did. That was the thing about being a billionaire. People stopped questioning you, even when you were clearly losing your mind. At 6:47 in the morning, her phone began buzzing with alerts. Victoria's hands shook as she opened the first notification. Target, Bronzeville location. $67.43. She opened the next one. Walgreens Pharmacy. $31.19. Her throat tightened as she kept reading. Children's Place. $85. Laundromat. $12.50. Then she saw it. Southside Community Kitchen. $500. Donation. Victoria's vision blurred. She pressed her palm against her mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in her chest. He donated to a community kitchen. A homeless man had taken her unlimited credit card and donated $500 to feed other hungry families. The last alert came through. Harold Washington Library. $8.75. Ma'am, we're here, her driver said gently. Victoria looked up. They'd arrived at the overpass. And there he was, the homeless man, folding what looked like clean clothes outside a battered tent. His son was wearing a new winter coat, bright blue, eating something from a paper bag. Victoria got out of the car before it fully stopped. The homeless man saw her coming and stood up quickly, holding out her credit card like he's been caught stealing. I didn't take anything I shouldn't have, he said immediately. I can show you every receipt. I kept them all. Victoria stopped a few feet away, trying to compose herself. I don't want the receipts. Then what do you want? I want to understand, Victoria said, her voice cracking. Why didn't you buy more? Why didn't you take advantage? The man looked confused. Because it wasn't mine to take. You gave me a chance, not permission to rob you. The donation, Victoria pressed. $500 to the Southside Community Kitchen. Why? His expression softened slightly. Have you ever been to the tent city under the Eisenhower Expressway? Victoria shook her head. There are families there. 3 kids for kids, all living in cars or tents. Single mothers. Elderly people. We only have each other. He glanced at his son, who was still eating, oblivious to the conversation. Cole and I, we're lucky in a way. It's just the 2 of us. Those families need help more than we do. Victoria felt something breaking inside her chest. What's your name? Timothy, he said after a moment. Timothy Chin. This is my son, Cole. How long have you been out here, Timothy? His jaw tightened. 3 years. And Cole? He's 6. He's never lived anywhere else. Timothy's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He doesn't remember having a home. The little boy coughed again, that same deep, rattling cough that had first caught Victoria's attention yesterday. The sound sent ice through her veins. "How long has he been coughing like that?" she asked. Timothy wouldn't meet her eyes. "A while." "Timothy, how long?" 78 days, he finally admitted, and the defeat in his voice was devastating. "I count them. Every morning I wake up and he's still coughing. I count another day." Victoria felt the ground shift beneath her. 78 days. Why hasn't he seen a doctor? "Because I don't have insurance," Timothy said, and now there was anger in his voice, though she could tell it wasn't directed at her. "I don't have an address. I don't have identification that's current. I can't get him into a free clinic without waiting 8 hours, and I can't leave him alone for 8 hours. I don't have anything except him, and I'm watching him get sicker every single day, and there's nothing I can do about it." His voice broke on the last word. Cole looked up concerned, but Timothy smiled at him quickly, reassuringly. The boy went back to his breakfast. Victoria made a decision. "Get in the car." "What?" "Get in the car," she repeated. "Both of you. Right now." Timothy backed up a step. "Look, I appreciate what you did, giving us the card and all, but we're not going anywhere with you. I don't know what you want from us." "I want to take Cole to a doctor," Victoria said firmly. "I want him to get the medical care he needs. And then I want to buy you both breakfast and talk about what happens next." "What happens next?" Timothy repeated slowly. "Yes," Victoria said. "Because this isn't over. Not anymore. I started this as an experiment, and you just taught me everything I needed to know. Now I need to do something about it." Timothy stared at her for a long moment. Victoria could see him calculating, weighing the risks, trying to decide if she was trustworthy. Finally, he called to his son. "Cole, buddy, come here." The little boy trotted over, still clutching his breakfast. Up close, Victoria could see how thin he was, how pale. His lips had a faint blue tinge. "We're going to go with this nice lady to see a doctor," Timothy said gently. "Is that okay?" Cole's eyes went wide. "A real doctor?" "A real doctor. Will they make the cough go away?" Timothy's expression crumpled for just a second before he caught himself. "They're going to try, buddy. They're going to try." 2 hours later, Victoria sat in a private examination room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital while a pediatrician examined Cole. Timothy sat beside her, looking completely out of place in the pristine medical setting. He kept glancing around nervously, like security might come throw them out at any moment. The doctor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Patel, listened to Cole's lungs for a long time. Too long. When she finally straightened up, her expression was serious. "It's pneumonia," she said. "Early stages, but it's definitely pneumonia. He needs antibiotics immediately, and he needs to be somewhere warm and dry while he recovers. If this had gone on much longer..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Timothy dropped his face into his hands. Dr. Patel looked at Victoria. "I assume you're handling the billing." "Yes," Victoria said immediately. "Whatever he needs. Whatever it costs." "I can't pay you back," Timothy said, his voice muffled by his hands. "I don't have anything to give you." "I'm not asking you to pay me back," Victoria said. "I'm asking you to let me help." "Why?" Timothy lifted his head, and his eyes were red. "You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Why are you doing this?" Victoria thought about her father's words, about her penthouse, about the credit card alerts that had shattered every assumption she'd ever held about poverty and human nature. "Because you showed me something I needed to see," she said quietly. "You had unlimited access to my money for 24 hours, and you bought groceries and medicine and clothes for your son. You donated to help other people. You bought a library membership because it mattered to you. You didn't waste a single dollar on yourself. I bought soap, Timothy said. And toothpaste. That was for me. Basic necessities aren't selfish, Timothy. They're survival. Victoria leaned forward. My father told me people can't be trusted with money. That poverty is a moral failing. That people who are homeless must have done something to deserve it. You just proved him wrong about all of it. 3 days later, Victoria sat across from Timothy in a coffee shop near the hospital. Cole was still admitted for observation, responding well to the antibiotics, but needing a few more days of monitoring. Timothy looked different now, clean-shaven, wearing simple but new clothes that Victoria had purchased. He still looked exhausted, but some of the desperation had faded from his eyes. I need to tell you something, Victoria said, sliding a folder across the table. And I need you to hear me out before you say no. Timothy opened the folder cautiously. Inside were documents, an employment contract, a lease agreement, school enrollment forms. What is this? He asked. It's a job offer, Victoria said. I'm developing a series of affordable housing projects on the South Side. Mixed-income communities with support services built in. Childcare, healthcare access, job training. I've been planning it for months, but I realized I have no idea what those communities actually need. I've been designing from my penthouse, making assumptions about what poor people want. Timothy was scanning the documents, his expression unreadable. I need someone who understands, Victoria continued. Someone who's lived it. Someone who can tell me when my ideas are stupid or out of touch, or just another rich person's fantasy about fixing poverty. I want to hire you as a community consultant. The pay is $60,000 a year to start, with benefits. Health insurance for you and Cole. I haven't worked in 3 years, Timothy said quietly. I don't have a resume anymore. I don't have references. You kept your son alive and hopeful while living under a highway, Victoria said. You made ethical choices when you had every reason not to. You showed compassion when you had nothing to spare. That's the resume I need. Timothy was quiet for a long moment. What about housing? There's an apartment in Pilsen, Victoria said. 2 bedrooms. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and it's safe and it's yours. Subsidized through my foundation, so the rent is income-based. There's an elementary school 2 blocks away. Cole can start as soon as he's healthy enough. She watched Timothy's hands shake as he held the papers. Why are you doing this? He asked again, and Victoria realized he might ask her that question 1,000 times before he believed the answer. Because I have money, Victoria said simply. And you have experience and insight and integrity. Neither of us can solve this problem alone, but maybe together we can make a difference. This isn't charity, Timothy. This is me realizing that wealth without purpose is just emptiness. You showed me what purpose looks like. I took your credit card and bought groceries, Timothy said. That's not some grand moral statement. You donated $500 to feed other families when you could have kept it for yourself, Victoria countered. You bought a library membership because your son needed books. You made choices based on what mattered, not what you wanted. Do you know how rare that is? Timothy closed the folder carefully. I need to think about it. Of course, Victoria said. Take your time. But she could see it in his eyes, the hope he was trying desperately not to feel, the fear that this might all disappear if he reached for it. She understood that fear. She'd been living with a different version of it her whole life, the fear that nothing she did would ever matter, that her wealth was just an accident of birth and her life was just a performance with no real meaning. Can I ask you something? Timothy said. Anything. What happened to Cole's mother? Victoria had been waiting for this question. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. No, I want to, Timothy said, and his voice was steady now. Her name was Sarah. We met in college. She was studying to be a teacher. We had this whole plan: get married, buy a house, have kids, the whole American dream thing. He smiled, but it was painful to watch. Cole was born 6 years ago, and Sarah got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 3 months later. Ovarian. By the time they caught it, it was everywhere. Our insurance covered the initial treatment, but then they started denying claims. Experimental therapies, they said. Not medically necessary. She died when Cole was 6 months old. Victoria felt tears burning behind her eyes. I used everything we had trying to save her, Timothy continued. Savings, retirement, I mortgaged the house. And then she was gone anyway, and I had a baby and a mountain of medical debt and no way to pay for any of it. I lost the house. I lost my job because I couldn't afford childcare and couldn't work without it. By the time Cole was 2, we were living in my car. By the time he was 3, I'd sold the car to buy food. I'm so sorry, Victoria whispered. The thing is, Timothy said, Sarah used to volunteer at that community kitchen. The one I donated to. Before she got sick, she'd take Cole there every week, and they'd help serve meals. She said it was important for him to understand that we help people, not because we have extra, but because it's the right thing to do. When I saw that credit card in my hand, I just kept thinking about what Sarah would want me to do with it. Victoria had to look away. She'd started this as an experiment, a test to prove or disprove her father's philosophy. But Timothy wasn't a test subject. He was a person who'd lost everything and still chose kindness. He was living proof that poverty wasn't a moral failing, that circumstances could destroy anyone, and that human dignity persisted even in the worst conditions. The library membership, Victoria said after a moment. Why was that important? Timothy's expression softened. Sarah used to take Cole to the Harold Washington Library when he was a baby. Before she got sick, she'd read to him in the children's section for hours. She said libraries were proof that some things in this world are free and beautiful, and everyone deserves access to beauty. After she died, I'd take him there when it was too cold outside, Timothy continued. The librarians knew us. They'd let us stay all day, even though we obviously had nowhere else to go. They never made us feel like we were doing something wrong by existing in their space. That library kept Cole safe more times than I can count. Victoria made another decision right there in the coffee shop. I'm donating $2 million to keep that library open and expand its hours. And I'm naming the children's wing after Sarah. Timothy's coffee cup clattered against the table. You can't do that. I absolutely can, Victoria said. And I'm going to. Because she was right. Some things should be free and beautiful. And her memory deserves to live in a place that meant something to her and Cole. Timothy couldn't speak. He just sat there with tears streaming down his face, not bothering to wipe them away. Victoria felt her own tears falling, and for once in her life, she didn't care about maintaining composure or projecting strength. This was real. This was what mattered. I'll take the job, Timothy said finally. I'll take the apartment. I'll take whatever help you're offering, because I can't do this alone anymore. I've been trying to do it alone for 3 years, and I'm so tired, Victoria. I'm so tired. You don't have to be alone anymore, Victoria said. 2 weeks later, Victoria stood in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Pilsen, watching Timothy and Cole unpack boxes. It wasn't much: donated furniture from her foundation's warehouse, basic kitchen supplies, secondhand dishes. But Cole was running from room to room with unbridled joy, marveling at having his own bedroom, his own bed, his own space. "Daddy, look," he kept shouting. "We have a bathroom inside. We don't have to go outside anymore." Timothy caught Victoria's eye and smiled, and the transformation in his face was stunning. He looked 10 years younger. He looked like a person who could imagine a future again. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're going to earn this," Victoria replied. "I'm not doing you a favor. I'm hiring you because I need what you know. Because I've been trying to solve poverty from a penthouse, and that's not working." "So what's the plan?" Timothy asked. Victoria pulled out her laptop and opened a presentation. "I want to build housing that doesn't trap people in poverty. Mixed income buildings where someone making $30,000 a year lives next door to someone making $100,000. On-site childcare, health clinics, job training programs, community gardens, spaces where people can rebuild their lives with dignity." Timothy studied the designs. "You're going to need more than buildings." "I know," Victoria said. "That's why I need you. Tell me what's missing." They spent the next 3 hours talking, and Victoria took notes on everything. Timothy explained the invisible barriers that kept people trapped, the need for an address to get a job, the need for a job to get an address, the way missing a single paycheck could spiral into eviction, the way childcare costs could exceed rent, the way a sick child meant choosing between keeping your job and keeping your kid alive. "It's not that people make bad choices," Timothy said. "It's that poverty gives you nothing but bad choices. You can pay rent or buy medicine. You can keep the heat on or buy food. You can work or watch your kids. Every choice costs something you can't afford to lose." Victoria listened to all of it, feeling her understanding of the world shift with every sentence. This was what she'd been missing. Not statistics or studies or nonprofit reports, but the lived reality of someone who'd survived it. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the Harold Washington Library with Timothy and Cole for the grand reopening of the children's wing. Cole was healthy now, thriving in first grade, his cough long gone. He'd grown 2 inches and gained 10 pounds. He looked like a completely different child. The wing was beautiful, bright colors, comfortable reading nooks, thousands of new books. And above the entrance, a bronze plaque read, "The Sarah Chin Memorial Children's Wing, where beauty is free and knowledge belongs to everyone." Cole stared up at it with wide eyes. "That's Mommy's name," he whispered. "Your mother believed everyone deserves access to something beautiful," Victoria told him. "And now kids all over Chicago will learn that because of her." Timothy was crying again, but this time they were different tears. Healing tears. Grateful tears. "She would have loved this," he said. "I know," Victoria replied. That evening, Victoria sat in her penthouse, looking out at the same window where this had all begun. But everything looked different now. The city lights weren't just pretty anymore. They represented real people with real struggles and real dignity. She picked up her phone and called her father. "Dad, I need to talk to you about the Foundation's giving strategy. I want to change it." "Victoria," her father started. "I know what you taught me," Victoria interrupted. "But you were wrong. Not about everything, but about this. People don't waste what they're given when they're treated with dignity. I have proof. I've spent 6 months working with someone who showed me exactly how wrong we've been." There was a long silence on the other end. "Tell me," her father said finally. So Victoria told him everything. About Timothy and Cole. About the credit card experiment. About the groceries and the donation and the library membership. About pneumonia and homelessness and the impossible choices poverty creates. About how everything she'd believed about human nature had been based on assumptions she'd never tested. I'm not asking permission, Victoria said. I'm informing you that the Ashford Foundation is changing direction. We're investing in people, not just programs. We're building dignity, not just housing. And we're trusting that people know what they need better than we do. Her father was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Victoria never expected. I'm proud of you. Victoria closed her eyes. Thank you. She hung up and looked at a photo on her desk. Her, Timothy, and Cole at the library opening. Three people from completely different worlds who'd found common ground in shared humanity. Her wealth finally had purpose. Not because she'd given it away, but because she'd learned to share it with dignity and partnership. Timothy had taught her that poverty wasn't a moral failing, it was a systemic failure. And maybe, just maybe, people with resources and people with experience could work together to fix it. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more stories about humanity, compassion, and the transformative power of treating people with dignity. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had an experience that completely changed how you see the world? I'd love to hear about it. Winter always gives way to spring, but only if we're brave enough to plant seeds in frozen ground. Victoria had planted seeds. Now she'd spend the rest of her life helping them grow.